So welcome everyone to the Open Door Community Health Center's webinar on navigating student loans. We are so glad you're here today. I'm Joy Sorensen-Navarre, president of Navigate, and we are really thrilled to be your new provider for student loan advice for all of the employees of the Open Door Community Health Centers. It is really a privilege for us to be your resource, and there is no cost to you. So this is our first live webinar, and if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. We'll have time also at the end for lots of questions, so please feel free to do so. I have a screen that I want to share with you as we get going here. All right. So this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about public service loan forgiveness, the limited waiver. I am wanting to say that the date of this webinar is September 7th, 2022. The limited waiver only goes till October 31st this year. So if you're listening to this webinar later, note that that deadline has already passed. But for everyone else who's live today and listening between those dates, we'll be talking about what the limited waiver is. We'll also talk about what it's like if you're going to use more than one student loan forgiveness plan. We'll talk about some really important paperwork details, and then lots of time for your questions and answers. All right, so almost everybody today that's going to school for a degree has student loans. And the size of student loans varies depending on what kind of degree you have or what kind of school you went to. But the payments can be high relative to the loan balance. And so let's say you have a loan balance of $30,000. If you want to pay off that loan in 10 years without using any special repayment plans or forgiveness programs, your monthly payment is going to be over $300 a month. If you're a physician or someone else with an advanced degree, your debt might be much higher. $250,000 to $450,000 is very common for physicians. And in that case, the monthly payment is really high, over $3,000 a month on just the straight standard 10-year payment plan. And so for many folks, that loan pressure is difficult. And I'm really glad that your employer said, hey, you are not alone. We're going to be in this with you to help figure out your best repayment plan. And I'm glad for that, because we know that the stress of a student loan, this is research from Dr. Julie Phillips out of Michigan. Physicians with student loans are showing signs of depression. They're putting off major life decisions. In some cases, there's a regret in terms of choice of career. And I think we can extrapolate that to anyone with a student loan. So here's what we know that everybody is looking for. They want to see this message from their student loan servicer, that their balance is zero. So let me tell you a story. Dr. Ben, we'll call him. He is a physician that recently received forgiveness. That was a photo of the message he got on his phone, that $0 balance, because of the limited waiver for public service loan forgiveness. And we'll talk more about this in a minute. But his story was that he had applied for forgiveness and he was denied. And so he sat down and met with us. He met us at a conference, and we did an analysis of what his loan opportunities were. And we found that the limited waiver was going to be good for him. And so we gave him step-by-step direction for what to do. He completed those steps, and then he had a long period of waiting until finally he got a message saying that his loans were forgiven. And his perspective on this was, he said to us, he's really glad that he took another minute just to double check on his loans to make sure he wasn't missing anything. And so that's one of the themes I would have for our conversation today. There are probably people on this call that are super duper smart on student loan repayment options. And if that's you, I would still encourage you to make an appointment with us or our team just to double check that you haven't missed something. All right, we know that lots of regulations and opportunities with student loans. And Usually about 3 out of 10 people that we meet with are perfectly fine. And if that's so, it only takes about 15 minutes to discover that together. And then we'll send you off with a virtual gold star and some relief that you've got everything covered. So let's start with what's happening right now with federal loans. So since March of 2020, we've had the COVID National Emergency Forbearance. All interest rates on federal loans are at 0%. Payments have been paused, and all those months of paused payments during this forbearance are qualifying for public service loan forgiveness. This COVID relief has been extended multiple times, but it looks like it will be ending for sure on December 31st this year. The other thing that's been happening with the COVID relief is that people who are using income-driven repayment plans, usually they have to recertify their income-driven repayment plan once a year. During the COVID national forbearance, those recertifications have not been required. If you're someone who is really on top of things and recertified anyway, there's a way to reverse that in many circumstances and get back to your prior lower payment if that was your situation. So that would be something to bring up when you're talking to your Navigate guide later. All right, let's talk about public service loan forgiveness. I'm thinking there's people on the call here who are already smart about this. So would you mind sharing? So what do you know about public service loan forgiveness? Like, what are the requirements? What are people's experience? I'll take maybe 3 comments here. Tell me what you know. Okay, so make 120 payments. Excellent. Yep. Sometimes people call this the 10-year program because it requires 120 on-time monthly payments. So yes, absolutely. And if you want to log in and live, feel free to do that. The second one in the chat is that you have to be working for a qualified employer. Bingo, that's one of the 3 main things. That's the second one. Qualified employers would include your organization, which is great for all of you. Any nonprofit, 501c3, a few of the 501c4s, any government agency. So for example, public school teachers, anyone who works for a tribal organization, all of those are qualifying employers. They need to be qualifying loans. Excellent. So it's only the direct loans, only federal loans, and more specifically, federal direct loans. When Congress started this program back in 2007, hard to believe, right? They knew that there'd be people that had the older loans, the FFEL and the Perkins loans. So if that's you, it's okay. You have opportunity to consolidate your loans into a direct consolidation, and then there'll be direct loans. And so then your loans will qualify. And then the other thing is every one of those monthly payments needs to be on a qualifying repayment plan, right? So most of those repayment plans are the income-driven repayment plans. Excellent. A+ for all of you. So what's the problem with public service loan forgiveness? So on the slide, you'll see that a lot of people have applied for it and very few have received it. For a long time, the success rate was 1%, then it inched up to 2% success rate. Now with the limited waiver, it's all the way up to a 5% success rate, which is very sad, right? It's a 95% failure rate. And it's a really important program for a lot of people who are providing care for our community members in many different ways. So everyone that's working with us is in the 5% because we know the rules and regulations. And more than that, we know how to fix the problems that your loan servicing company might be creating for you. So we know that they are creating problems, errors, mistakes, and sometimes you could, as the borrower, could be doing everything perfectly, and still they could make a mistake, and it could cause you to miss out on some of your payments. or to have your application denied, all kinds of things we've seen. Let's just wait. Let me gather some questions. Are there any questions right here about public service loan forgiveness before we go on to the waiver? We'll have a time for questions at the end too. So be thinking if you have any questions. All right, so let's go on to the waiver. So because there were so many errors made by loan servicing companies and the federal government, that the government had to thankfully created this limited waiver opportunity. What this is, it's a 1-year time period where you can, if you're a borrower who in the past wasn't qualified for public service loan forgiveness, or there was an error by your loan servicing company, they're loosening the rules. So now you can get credit for past periods that didn't qualify for public service loan forgiveness. And so the people who might want to be looking at getting help from the waiver would be people that have federal loans, have been making payments prior to the COVID forbearance, have had nonprofit employment, and maybe in the past you had applied for public service loan forgiveness and you got that rejection letter saying that you were denied for some reason or other. If you are one of those people, likely you are eligible for public service loan forgiveness, and there's just a couple of things that you need to do. So often what we're seeing is these would be people that have older loans. So you might have loans that you got prior to 2010. From 2010 till today, the loans that have been awarded have all been direct loans, but prior to 2010, there were many of those older loans that you did not qualify in the past for public service loan forgiveness. There also were people who were on an extended repayment plan rather than an income-driven repayment plan. So if that's you, in the past that would not have qualified for public service loan forgiveness, but now it does. And then there are a lot of people that had errors in terms of the counting of qualifying payments. We have clients who so a lot of people have multiple student loans, and you send in one payment and then your student loan servicing company will disperse those payments among your variety of student loans. We have a number of situations where the loan servicing company inappropriately applied those dollars. And so one loan would be 2 cents less of the payment and a different loan would have a 2-cent higher payment. And so then those loans that didn't do a complete payment were not considered qualifying payments. Excuse me. So that's one of the things that will be corrected with the waiver. The waiver started in October 31st, October last year. It ends October 31st of this year. So here's a story of someone who is eligible for the limited waiver. They graduated in 2010. They had $80,000 in FFEL loans, those older loans. They're making payments of over $300 a month, and they still owed $14,000 on their loans. They've been paying for over 10 years, right? But their loan type wasn't eligible because it was that older FFEL instead of a direct. But they were working full-time at a nonprofit organization for at least 10 years. That person is eligible through the waiver to have that $14,833 wiped off the books because they've met the criteria. They only need to do 2 things. So all the details are different for everyone, but this is an example of how it can be helpful. So here are your 2 steps. So if you fall in that category, you just need to do 2 things. You need to apply for a direct consolidation loan at studentaid.gov. And then secondly, you need to submit a public service loan forgiveness verification form to your employer. So to any employer you've worked for while you were making payments on your loans since October 1st, 2007. And both of those steps need to be initiated by you, completed by you, the application completed and the form submitted by October 31st this year. They don't need to be completely processed by the student loan servicing company, but they need to be completely submitted by you. Okay. This is where to go to apply for a direct consolidation loan, studentaid.gov. You log in, it's right there on the front. And then this is the tool to use to apply to generate your public service loan forgiveness employment verification form. It's called the PSLF help tool, and you can find it at studentaid.gov/PSLF. All right. Just checking to make sure we don't have anybody still in our waiting room here. Okay, good. So I want to talk to you specifically now about that public service loan forgiveness form. Okay, so this form, this is your employment certification form. It's not required on an annual basis. However, I strongly recommend that you turn this in once a year. And the reason to do that is that when you submit it, they will update your count of your number of qualifying payments. If you don't submit this until the very end after you've made your 120th payment, you actually won't know how many of your payments have qualified. And worse, you won't know if there was an error in the counting. And let me tell you, there have been a lot of errors in the counting over the years. And if you don't submit the form, you won't know there's a problem. And so let's say you get to your 120th payment, you submit the form then to apply for forgiveness, and they'll say, oh, you don't qualify because you only have 107, for example, qualifying payments. But you know you've made 120, you've got record of that. Now then you call us and set an appointment with us. We'll get on the phone with you and the loan servicing company to try and find those missing 13 payments. I've done a lot of these phone calls. We are always eventually successful, but it is much better not to have this problem at the very end and to find out about it along the way so you can correct it. And so when you finally get to your 120th payment, everything will go smoothly. Okay, so if you are submitting this form before you've made your 120th payment, look down here on the left, you see there's an X towards the bottom. It says, I just want to find out how many qualifying payments I've made or if my employer is a qualified employer. So when you're generating the form on the PSLF help tool at studentaid.gov/PSLF, you will click that box unless you've made 120 payments. And if you have already made 120 payments, then you click the second box. I believe I qualify for forgiveness with PSLF or temporary PSLF right now. It's a little confusing. Sometimes people think it means eventually I will be, qualified, but really it means I've already made my 120 payments. Okay. The other thing I want to show you on this form are the pieces that are really important for your qualification. So you want to make sure that your dates of employment are correct. You want to make sure that your employment begin date is always the same one. So say you're working for the same organization and every year you're turning in this form. And let's say you started working for Open Door on September 1st, 2020. Every year when you send in this form, you want to make sure that you have the same employment begin date. That should not be changing. Always put that on the form. If you have sometimes, people guess at their start date. Don't do that. Because if you send in two forms in 2 different years with different start dates, they will think you're really with 2 different employers, and then you might have one of your forms rejected. All right, so that's one of the things to be careful of. And then employment end date or still employed. So click whichever is true for you. And then in order to qualify for public service loan forgiveness, your employment status must be full-time as defined by the employer, at least 30 hours a week. Okay, so let me just repeat that. For your payments to qualify for public service loan forgiveness, you must be a full-time employee at least 30 hours a week. There is another way to qualify, and that's working, more than one part-time job. So 2 or more part-time jobs that together add up to at least 30 hours a week. So those are the 2 ways you can qualify. Working for qualified employers, either full-time or more than one part-time job that is at least 30 hours a week. All right. And then this is a really important piece that I want you to see. This is on the employer side. So Laura, thank you for signing these forms. So this is where the employer verifies that, yep, this person works for us, and yes, those dates of employment are correct. And then they sign it and date it, and then they send it back to you, and then you upload it into your, at this point, it would be likely a Mohila account, or if you don't have your Mohila account yet, on page 4 of the form, there is a fax number on where you can fax this form. What I want you to see is the other red goofy circle on the bottom right-hand corner. See where there's that 9-letter code? That 9-letter code is really important to have a code. It doesn't matter what the code is. There just needs to be a code existing on the bottom of this form, because that indicates that your employer is pre-verified. And more importantly, that will expedite the processing of this form. And when you have that form in order with that code on the bottom, you might get a response within 10 days of after submitting. And that response will be an email or a letter saying, congratulations, your employer is a qualified employer and you have this many qualifying payments so far. Might be 2 qualifying payments or 102 qualifying payments, but that's the number you want to be tracking every year to see it growing towards your 120. There are some people that have submitted just a manual form that does not have that code on the bottom. If that's you and you're still waiting to get a response back, it's because you're likely in the manual queue that's taking 6 to 12 months to process. Okay, so if that is you, if you submitted one of these forms without that code on the bottom, this is a fairly new change that they've made within the last 18 months. It's okay to submit another one, making sure that you have the code on the bottom, and then it will process more quickly. All right, lots of details here. Hope people are tracking with me. All right, we're going to shift from talking about public service loan forgiveness to talking about some other programs, because I know that for Open Door, you have a lot of options in terms of loan forgiveness programs. So you have the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. You also have the National Health Service Corps. And then you have many state and local programs. So often people wonder, well, can I use all of these? Can I use only one of these? Is it called double dipping? Like, how does it work? So in many cases, you can use public service loan forgiveness with these other programs. Often these other federal programs don't allow you to use 2 different federal programs, but you can always use public service loan forgiveness with these other programs. And then the question becomes, do I need to use more than one program, right? And so really the best way to know that is to set an appointment with us, use our special calculators, we'll help you figure that out, and we'll create a plan with you for how to use more than one. And what we often see borrowers doing, let's say someone has a nice award, maybe it's a $25,000 award from a different organization, from a state or local program, from the National Health Service Corps. What we often see people doing is taking those dollars, if it's allowed, and putting them in a side account, a bank account, and then using that account to make their monthly regular income-driven repayment plan payments for public service loan forgiveness, because it requires 120 payments, right? So you set aside those special dollars, don't mingle them with your household accounts, set them aside in a separate account and use that account to make your payments. And that way you can be qualifying for both public service loan forgiveness and some of these other programs. And having the best benefit from them. So using federal dollars instead of your own dollars from your own household to make your monthly payments. Okay, there are some people on the call perhaps that don't have federal loans, totally fine. And in that case, what often people do is they look to refinance their loans to lower their interest rates. Okay, so in this example of a physician with a big student loan, 400,000 at a 7.5%, 7.15% interest rate. If they refinance the loans, got a lower interest rate, it would save them over $600 a month and over $76,000 overall on their loans. So that's why someone would refinance their student loans, is to get a lower interest rate. That's something else we can help you with. Again, we could help you with the calculations to see how much savings you'd have, give you some instruction on where to go to find, to shop for interest rates. We want to be helpful for you with any questions that you have on your student loans. So yeah, so please, if you want to set an appointment with us, please do. If you have any questions, if you want to run your numbers and get step-by-step direction for how to go about managing your student loans in the best way possible, use this link, flipthescript.loan/open-door. This will take you immediately to our calendars. You can schedule an appointment with us. It'll be a virtual appointment. The only thing we need would be your official list of loans. If it's your federal loans, your TXT file from studentaid.gov. If you have private loans, just a picture of your most recent statement. And then from there on, we are on your team for the lifetime of your loans. So let's say you're pursuing public service loan forgiveness. Let's say we get you all set up and you're perfectly fine. And all of a sudden, 3 years from now, you get a letter from your loan servicing company saying, oh, there's a problem. You no longer qualify, or your count of qualifying payments is off, or you get a letter and you don't even know what it means and you wonder if you should worry about it or you should take action. Anytime that happens related to your student loans, you just shoot us an email with a copy of whatever letter you've gotten, and we'll read it and we'll tell you if this is something to be worried about or if it's just a generic informational letter. All right. So from now on, we can be part of your team if you invite us in to help you with everything related to your student loans at any level that you would like. You might be a do-it-yourselfer and you just want us to check, totally fine. Or you might be someone that wants us to, be on the phone with you as you're filling out the application, the online application. We're happy to do that too. Whatever level of support that you would like, it's our job to make sure that your student loans are easy for you and that you have the support you need to feel confident in your student loan plans. This is my email address, joy@navigatestudentloans.com. If you have a question, you just have something quick, you just need a quick answer to, feel free to email me there. And usually within 24 hours, I'll be back to you with an answer. All right. Your questions, let me look at the time. Oh, we've got good 15 minutes for questions. What questions do you have? How can I be of service to you?
I have a question. If you can hear me, can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
Okay, yeah. So when you say income driven, is that, I guess, depending on your income and what your payments would reflect?
Correct.
Or okay, so they're not going to use whatever you owe as far as your student loan amount as a way to break down.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that means if, let's just say, if you don't have the loan of a doctor, then, but you're working in a position where you're not getting paid as much as a doctor would, so your payments would be less.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
And then what we would do, we would figure out with you. Let's just say this example. I'm just going to make up some numbers, okay? So let's say someone owes $30,000, and they're making $30,000 of income. I'm just making this up. Their payment is probably going to be, I don't know, depending on if they're married and how many kids they have. There's a couple of more details. It could be $100 a month, for example. And it would have taken $300 a month to pay them off in 10 years. So by having that smaller payment and pursuing public service loan forgiveness, at the end of 10 years of making on-time payments that are smaller, easier for your budget, there will be a balance remaining, and that remaining balance will be forgiven. So that's how the program works.
And my second question to follow up on that is, if you haven't made any payments, would you still qualify to apply for this?
Great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, great question. I'm so glad someone asked that question. Absolutely. If you haven't made any payments, or you made payments that didn't qualify, because a lot of people are on that extended plan, because it's a 25 or 30-year plan, and they have lower payments. It would be really good to set an appointment, and we can just double check for you what kind of opportunities you have. The limited waiver might be a good opportunity, or it might be a good opportunity to get onto public service loan, or you don't get onto the program, but to set yourself up so that your future payments qualify for public service loan forgiveness. And with the waiver, you might even catch some of the old months during the COVID national forbearance that actually could be used towards your 120 payments. So yeah, it's never too late to look into it. Is there another follow-up question from that person? Okay. We have a question in the chat room. It says, what's the website to find out how many payments were submitted for public service loan forgiveness? That's a good question. It's a little tricky right now. For many years, the only loan servicing company that has been tracking everyone who's pursuing public service loan forgiveness is the loan servicer called MyFed Loans. And so once a borrower would submit that public service loan forgiveness form for their employment, that would transfer all of their loans from whoever else they were with, Nelnet or Great Lakes or, Navient, over to Fed Loans. And then Fed Loans, those loan servicers are in charge of tracking your number of qualifying payments. Fed Loans is exiting their contract with the federal government because basically they were so naughty, they were being held accountable because they made too many mistakes. And so they didn't like the new accountability from the federal government. So they're exiting their contract. And now Mohila, M-O-H-E-L-A, Mohila is the new loan servicing company that is servicing everyone who's pursuing public service loan forgiveness. So if you haven't submitted a form yet, the employment certification form for PSLF, likely your loans might be with a different servicer, and you will not be able to know how many qualifying payments you have until you submit that form. Your loans transfer over to Mohila, and then you will look on your Mohila account, and it tracks for you your number of qualifying payments. All right. Is there a follow-up question on that one? That's sort of a complicated answer. If so, drop it in the chat and I'll be watching. Okay. There's a question if Navigate can help folks sign up for other programs like the state programs. Absolutely. We've had Laura's help to understand all the different programs that are available, and we can help you figure out what your action steps are for the federal and the state and local programs. There's a question about the slideshow being available. I can absolutely make it available. Laura, I think, Laura, you have the slideshow. I can make it available again, or Laura, would you be able to send it out to our participants, or?
Sure, and then you'll send us the one with the recorded one.
Yes, I will too.
As well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. I submitted under my Fed Loans. Do I have to do anything for Mohila? Yeah. No, if you submitted your form with Fed Loans, you are good to go, and you will see the tracker there that shows the number of qualifying payments you've made. And sometime the transfer of loans from my Fed Loans over to Mohila started this summer, and they anticipate it'll be done by the end of September, but they are notoriously slow at doing things. So I would if you are a Fed loans borrower, I'd expect to see that transfer happen shortly, like within the next month, if they haven't happened already. And we haven't seen any trouble like so far with the transfer. It's gone very smoothly for people. People are telling us they like the new Mohila website. We have seen a little bit of trouble when people are calling Mohila to ask questions of the customer service reps, just because there's a lot of new people that were newly hired and they're still sort of in the midst of training. So I would cannot guarantee that you're going to get a completely true and factual answer from the customer service people at Mohila yet. So if you're got doubts about things, just shoot us an email and typically we can answer that question for you pretty quickly. Great questions.
I think there was a question earlier about, does it cost to
Whoops.
do a session with you guys? I don't know if you already
Great
answered that or
question.
not.
Thanks for seeing that one. It is free to you today and always because of the leadership at Open Door Community Health Centers. There are a number of organizations across the country that are starting to do this. And I think what they see is, and there's research on this, that, the student loan system obviously is broken, right? And so we need all of you to get smart to be able to care for us, right? I'm a healthcare consumer, so I'm part of this broken system. You've got to take on these big student loans in order to have the career you need to take care of us. And so we're all part of this broken system. And healthcare employers are feeling that too. And so they're wanting to come alongside their employees to say, hey, we want to help you manage these to the best of your ability. And so they're entering into agreements with organizations like ours and picking up the bill. So yeah, take advantage of this. Your employer has already paid for you to get the free advice from us. Other questions? All right, I see a question here. What about loans that are in default? How realistic is it to be able to get back on track? Totally, there's a fresh start that was announced. I don't know if it's actually happened yet. And there are some sort of caveats to which direction is best for rehabilitating your loans, but that would be a great question to schedule an appointment with us for, to see if we can't get you anyone who's in that situation to be eligible for the public service loan forgiveness waiver to count those prior payments. Excellent. Oh, the question about the Biden loan forgiveness. How could we not talk about this today? Oh, this is like the newest thing. So yes, there will be forgiveness of $10,000 or $20,000 of student loans thanks to the Biden administration. I think they're acknowledging the problems, right? And so they're trying to do what they can to fix it within the scope of public interest. And so if you have a Pell Grant, if you received a Pell Grant anytime in the past, even just for one semester, you will be eligible for the $20,000 forgiveness. If you never received a Pell Grant, you're eligible for the $10,000 forgiveness. There is an income limit. So if you are a single person, the income limit is $125,000. So up to that, if you're making less than that, will receive that loan forgiveness. If you're a married person, that is a $250,000 limit on income. They're going to be looking at your 2020 or your 2021 adjusted gross income to apply those limits. If you already have your income information in the system for the federal student loan plan, for example, if you're on pay-as-you-earn or revised pay-as-you-earn or the income-based repayments, we believe that's going to be an automatic forgiveness that's going to happen. So that's terrific. If you are a person with those older loans, the FFEL or the Perkins loans, you need to consolidate your loans into a direct consolidation in order to get that forgiveness. So that would be one of the only two to-do list. And the second to-do might be to fill out an application. I don't think they've released the application yet. We've been waiting to see it. And that is for people that don't have their income information on file already with studentaid.gov. It should be automatic for a lot of borrowers. It will just, forgiveness will happen. You'll see the new number, your balance be reduced by that amount. We have seen some pretty good communication from studentaid.gov. So that'd be another reminder. Make sure that they have your current email address. They're doing a lot of communicating by email. So just log on to studentaid.gov. If you have a federal student loan, you have an account with them, and just double check your profile to make sure that your email address is current with them. The other thing just to mention, since someone reminded me about the Biden loan forgiveness, there was another announcement that happened in April. It's called the IDR, the Income Driven Repayment Account Adjustment. And sometime in the fourth quarter of this year, we're anticipating that they're going to go through all the old records of repayment, and they're going to count some periods of forbearance as actually qualifying for public service loan forgiveness or that longer 20 or 25-year loan forgiveness program. That also will happen automatically, so you don't need to do anything, but you want to just be watching. And that'll be something that we'll look at with you if you schedule an appointment with us to see if, like, there's multiple things happening right now and which ones apply to you, which ones don't apply to you. I don't mean to make things more complex. Our whole goal is to make things simpler for you. So if your head is spinning, I apologize, but schedule an appointment. We'll know exactly how to help you figure out exactly for you what is the right next steps. Just checking my time here. We've got 2 minutes. I have a last question. Well, then I guess I will ask you if you found this helpful. Please be watching for the replay of this presentation and share it with your colleagues. It's really important that everybody knows these options. Every student loan borrower knows these options and what is available to them to give them some loan solutions, some loan relief.
I have one more question, Joy.
Sure.
First of all, thank you. Wonderful presentation, very informative and very not as scary as one would think it would be. So, my question is, will the presentation on Monday next week will be, the same as today, the format and information? Because I think I saw something for Monday, and I think folks who aren't able to attend today are interested in attending on Monday.
Laura, that's a question for you.
Yeah, I think it's designed the same. This one was, we wanted to roll it out with providers and HR so they get trained. And then Monday is for staff. But I think it's going to be the same information. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So you would help us by letting people know. Thank you. All right, I'm going to pause my recording.